You've had this feeling before. Someone is talking to you, looking you in the eye, saying all the right things. And something just feels wrong. You can't name it. You can't point to a single sentence and say that's the lie. But something in you knows, before your conscious mind has caught up, that what you're hearing is not the whole truth. That feeling isn't paranoia. It isn't irrational. It's your brain picking up on a very real signal, a gap between what someone's words are saying and what their body is doing. And that gap exists because of something fundamental. The mouth is under conscious control. The body, largely, is not. When someone lies, their conscious mind is busy building the story, choosing the words, managing the logic, keeping the narrative consistent. But that takes effort and focus. And while all of that cognitive work is happening up front, the body, running on a much older, faster, unconscious system, keeps doing what it always does. It responds to what is actually true. Researchers call this non-verbal leakage, the signals that escape, even when someone is trying very hard to control how they appear. In this video, we're going to go through 9 of them, 9 specific, researched, observable signals that show up in the body when someone is not telling you the full truth. But before we do, and this matters, I want to start with the most important caveat in all of body language research, because without it, everything that follows becomes dangerous rather than useful. We'll come back to it at the end too. For now, just hold this thought. No single sign is proof of anything on its own. What we're looking for is clusters, patterns, changes from someone's baseline. Keep that in mind throughout everything we cover. 9 signs. Let's go through them one by one. Let's understand the foundation first, because knowing why this works makes the signs themselves much easier to spot and trust. The human brain operates on 2 speeds simultaneously. The conscious, deliberate, language-based system, the one you're using right now to understand these words, and the much older, faster automatic system that manages your breathing, your heart rate, your muscle tension, and crucially, your emotional responses. When you lie, you're running a deliberate, effortful process. You're constructing a narrative, monitoring for consistency, watching for the other person's reactions. That's a lot of cognitive work, and it all happens in the slow, conscious system. But your emotional state, the stress of lying, the fear of being caught, the guilt or discomfort of the deception, all of that is processed by the automatic system. And the automatic system has a direct line to your body. The limbic system, the emotional center of the brain, responds to stress by sending signals throughout the body. It increases cortisol, it tightens muscles, it speeds breathing. It triggers small, instinctive movements designed to self-regulate or self-protect. All of this happens faster than conscious thought. And because the conscious mind is busy managing the lie, it often can't also manage all of these bodily responses at the same time. That's the gap. That's where the signals leak through. Not because liars are stupid or obvious, but because the human system simply cannot fully suppress the body's emotional responses while simultaneously constructing a believable story. Something always escapes, and if you know where to look, you'll start to see it. One more thing before we start. The most important concept in real behavioral analysis, used by FBI negotiators, forensic interviewers, and intelligence professionals, is the concept of baseline. Everyone has their own default way of moving, speaking, and holding their body. Nervous people tap their feet. Comfortable people open their posture. None of these things mean anything on their own. What matters is a change from that person's baseline. That's what we're looking for. A deviation. Something different from how they normally present. With that foundation in place, let's look at the 9 signs. Sign 1, the micro-expression flash. Psychologist Paul Ekman spent decades researching facial expressions across cultures and discovered something remarkable. Genuine emotions produce brief, involuntary muscle movements in the face that are universal, the same across every human culture ever studied. He called the fastest of these micro-expressions. They last between 1/25th and 1/5 of a second. They happen before the face consciously arranges itself into its intended expression, and they show the real emotion before the performer emotion takes over. What you're looking for is a fleeting expression that doesn't match what the person is saying. Someone telling you they're fine, and for a fraction of a second, before the calm expression settles, you catch something that looks like distress, contempt, or fear. That flash is real. The expression that follows it is the performance. In real-time conversation, most people miss this entirely, but when you know to look for it, you'll start to catch it at the edges of your peripheral attention, even before your conscious mind has named it. That gut feeling, this is often what's triggering it. Sign 2, the self-soothing touch. When the body experiences stress, including the stress of deception, it instinctively tries to comfort itself. One of the most common ways it does this is through touch. People under stress often unconsciously touch their neck, their face, their hair, or rub their hands together. These gestures activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the calming system, and provide momentary relief from tension. The specific gestures vary by person. Some people touch their collarbone, some rub the back of their neck, some lightly touch their lips. What's significant is when these touches cluster around specific moments, right as a potentially sensitive question is asked, right after a specific topic comes up, right as they're giving a particular answer. The timing is the clue. The body is trying to calm itself down at the exact moment the mind is working hardest. Watch for the timing, not just the gesture. Sign 3, the barrier position. When humans feel threatened, unsafe, or stressed, their bodies instinctively create distance and protection. One of the most common ways this shows up is through barrier behavior, crossing the arms, turning the torso sideways, placing an object between themselves and the other person, or angling the feet toward the nearest exit even while the upper body stays engaged. The feet in particular are one of the most reliable body language signals. They're the body part furthest from the face, the body part we almost never consciously monitor. Joe Navarro, a former FBI behavioral specialist, writes extensively about this in his research. The feet tell you where a person genuinely wants to go. If someone's feet are pointed away from you, toward a door, toward an exit, toward anywhere else, while their face and words are fully engaged with you, their body is communicating something very different from their mouth. That misalignment is worth noticing, and it's not always as obvious as crossed arms. Sometimes the barrier is a coffee cup someone picks up and holds between them and you when a certain topic comes up. Sometimes it's a slight turn of the torso, sometimes it's leaning back in the chair. The body is creating distance, and distance when it appears in response to a specific topic or question is information. Sign 4, the speech pattern change. This is one of the most reliable, most research-backed signs available, and one of the most overlooked because people tend to listen to the content of what someone says rather than how they're saying it. The how is often more truthful than the what. What to listen for is a change from baseline. Someone who normally speaks fluidly and at a consistent pace, suddenly adding lots of filler words, like, especially when answering specific questions. Someone who normally pauses briefly before answering, suddenly taking much longer on a particular topic. Someone who normally uses simple language, suddenly becoming strangely formal, or adding excessive qualifications to a specific statement. Research from the University of Portsmouth found that liars tend to use fewer details in their accounts, are more likely to repeat exact phrases verbatim, and often speak at a slightly slower pace, because the mental effort of maintaining a false account is genuinely cognitively demanding. But they also found something that might surprise you. Some experienced liars speak faster because they've rehearsed the story and want to get through it before it can be questioned. Which brings us back always to the same principle. What's the change from how this particular person normally communicates? That deviation is the signal. Sign 5, eye movement. And I need to start this one by clearing up one of the most confidently wrong things most people believe about lying and eye contact. You have probably heard that liars avoid eye contact, or that looking up and to the left means you're lying, or that looking up and to the right means you're accessing real memory. Almost all of this is wrong, or at the very least, vastly oversimplified. Researchers at the University of Edinburgh ran multiple studies specifically testing the claim that eye direction predicts deception and found no reliable connection. People look in different directions for many reasons. They're thinking, they're visual processors, they're remembering something genuinely, and experienced liars know the look-away lying myth well enough to maintain deliberate, steady eye contact precisely to appear truthful. So avoiding eye contact alone means essentially nothing. What eye behavior can tell you is something different. Watch for a sudden, unnatural increase in eye contact. Someone who knows the look away equals lying myth overcorrects and locks eyes with you in a way that feels oddly intense or deliberate. Watch for eye contact that doesn't shift or blink at the normal rate. Sustained, unblinking stares can indicate extreme cognitive focus because the person is concentrating hard on managing their story. And watch for the eyes that engage the face but not the emotion. More on this in Sign 8. The eyes are informative, but not in the ways most people think. Sign 6, the freeze response. The human threat response has 3 options: fight, flight, or freeze. When someone encounters an unexpected, threatening question while lying, the freeze response often activates before the others. They go completely still. The normal, natural, continuous small movements that characterize most human conversations, small gestures, small shifts of weight, small head movements, all of them stop simultaneously. This is what behavioral analysts call limbic freeze. It happens when the limbic system, the survival brain, takes a moment to assess the threat. And because the body's primary defense in that moment is stillness and invisibility, movement stops. You'll often see this specifically when someone is caught off guard by a question they weren't prepared for. The conversation is flowing, then you ask something specific, and for just a moment, a second or two, sometimes less, they go very, very still before answering. That stillness, specifically in contrast to how animated they were a moment before, is your sign. It's the body saying, before the words do, this requires more careful management than what we were just doing. Notice it. Don't react to it visibly. Just file it away and watch what comes next. Sign 7. Overcompensating details. You ask a simple question. The answer you get is 3 times longer than it needs to be, filled with specific, unnecessary details, and ends with something that slightly undermines the point of asking. This is one of the most telltale verbal signs of deception, and it's driven by a very understandable psychological impulse. When someone is lying, they often feel that a short, simple answer won't be believable enough, so they add detail. Specific times, specific locations, names of people who happened to be there, sensory details, what they had for lunch that day, what the weather was like. All of this feels to the liar like it's making the story more convincing. What it actually does to an attentive listener is signal that the person is working very hard to construct something credible. Real memories are often incomplete. People who are telling the truth will frequently say things like, "I don't remember exactly," or "I think it was around that time." Truthful accounts have natural gaps and uncertainties, because that's how real memory actually works. When every detail is accounted for, every question is answered immediately with precision, and every loose thread gets tied up. That completeness itself is often a sign of construction rather than recall. Real life is messy. Perfect stories are made, not remembered. Sign 8. The mismatched smile. This is possibly the single most important facial sign on this list, because it's both the most researched and the most universally overlooked. Paul Ekman's research identified 2 distinct categories of smiles. The Duchenne smile, named after the neurologist who first studied it, is a genuine smile. It involves the movement of not just the zygomatic major muscle, which pulls the corners of the mouth upward, but also the orbicularis oculi, the muscle around the eye. A genuine smile reaches the eyes. A false smile or a social performance smile typically involves only the mouth. The eyes stay neutral, or even slightly cold. And crucially, the false smile often appears and disappears at slightly different times to a genuine one. A genuine smile emerges gradually, holds naturally, and fades gradually. A performed smile often appears suddenly, holds for slightly too long or too briefly, and sometimes vanishes abruptly, leaving a neutral expression the moment the person thinks you've seen what they needed you to see. Practice watching for this. In real conversations, genuine moments of warmth and amusement create eyes that genuinely crinkle. Social obligation smiles, the kind that accompany reassurances, pleasantries, and things people want you to believe, usually stop at the mouth. Once you can see this distinction, you cannot unsee it, and it will tell you quite reliably when someone is performing warmth rather than feeling it. Sign 9, the timing gap. This is the one that ties everything together and is perhaps the most elegant, because it's about the relationship between what someone says and when their body reacts to what they're saying. Genuine emotions precede their expression. If something truly surprises you, the surprise appears on your face immediately, before you have time to process it consciously or narrate it verbally. But fake emotional reactions follow words. When someone is performing an emotion they don't genuinely feel, they have to consciously deploy it, which means it almost always appears after the verbal statement that was supposed to produce it, rather than simultaneously with it or before it. Someone who genuinely hears shocking news will react with the expression of shock before they say a word. Someone performing shock will often say, "Oh my God, that's terrible," and then arrange their face accordingly a beat or two later. That delay, that timing gap, is the tell. The more you practice watching for this in everyday conversation, not suspiciously, just observantly, the more natural it becomes to spot. And it applies not just to dramatic emotional reactions, it applies to small things too. A flash of irritation before someone says, "I'm not bothered." A moment of concern before someone says, "I had no idea." The emotion leaks out before the performance catches up. Now I need to come back to something I said at the very beginning, because if I finish here without saying this clearly, this video could actually cause harm rather than help. None of these signs are proof. Every single one of them can also be explained by anxiety, illness, cultural difference, neurodivergence, shyness, fatigue, or simply being someone who communicates differently. Honest people who are nervous about being believed look deceptive. People on the autism spectrum may show very different baseline behaviors that have nothing to do with dishonesty. People from different cultural backgrounds may have entirely different norms around eye contact, touch, and emotional expression. Real professional behavioral analysts, FBI-trained, forensic interviewers, clinical psychologists do not make determinations based on any one or even two signs. They look for clusters. Multiple signs appearing together, specifically in response to particular topics, showing a clear deviation from that specific individual's established baseline. That's a very different practice from watching someone for 30 seconds and deciding they're lying because they touched their face. Use this information to become more observant, to pay more attention to the full channel of communication in any conversation, to take your gut feelings more seriously, because now you have a framework for why they often know things before your conscious mind does, but use it as a starting point for curiosity, not as a final verdict. Reading the body well doesn't mean reading the mind perfectly. It means listening more closely to a channel that most people tune out entirely. The goal isn't to be suspicious of everyone. The goal is to never be surprised by anyone. Every conversation you have is happening on two tracks at once, the words and everything underneath the words. Most people only hear one of them. Now you know the other one exists. Practice quietly. Practice curiously. Watch people not with suspicion, but with genuine interest in the full picture of what they're communicating. Over time, you'll stop needing to consciously run through a checklist. The pattern recognition becomes automatic, and that feeling you started with, that something just doesn't feel right, will become something you trust completely, because you'll know exactly what's behind it. Every room you walk into from now on is a room full of information you weren't reading before. Your mind is always working, even in the silences between someone's words. Stay aware. If this gave you a new way of paying attention in conversations, the next step is learning the other side of this. How dominant, powerful people use body language deliberately to control a room. The dominant signals video covers exactly that, and it's linked on screen now. Or if you want to go deeper into manipulation itself, the gaslighting video is the perfect companion to everything we covered today. Stay aware.